The aliens came to conquer America. 3 hours later, they were begging to go home. This is not a joke. This is the true account of the worst invasion in galactic history, and it started in a Walmart parking lot at 4 in the morning on Black Friday. The Gravax Empire had beaten 40 planets into submission. They had never lost a single campaign. They picked America because their scanners said it was disorganized, undisciplined, and weak. They were wrong about all three. If you want to see an empire fall apart because of a doorbuster sale and a karaoke machine, hit subscribe right now and stay with me, because this story only gets crazier from here. Like this video, drop a comment with your prediction, and let's begin this journey into the single greatest military disaster in the history of the stars. The Gravax mothership entered Earth's orbit on a Thursday night in November, completely undetected. Their cloaking technology was perfect. Their timing was not. Commander Thessaly Vance, no relation to the humans below, just an unfortunate coincidence in translation software, stood on the bridge studying the readings coming from a city called Springfield, Ohio. It was not the capital. It was not a military base. It was, according to every scan they ran, the most chaotic population center on the entire continent. Commander Vance had crushed rebellions on Pallor 7. He had broken the will of the Dren Collective in 11 days. He believed in order, in discipline, in clean strategic execution. His second-in-command, a sharp young officer named Reth Calloway, pulled up the live data feed and frowned. "Sir, this doesn't make sense. Movement patterns are completely random. There's no formation, no command structure. And emotional readings are spiking into territory our instruments have never even charted. Define the spike. Somewhere between religious ecstasy and outright warfare." Vance leaned over the display. Thousands of humans were gathered outside a single retail building before dawn, shouting, pushing, holding signs, wrapped in blankets, drinking from giant cups. Some were sleeping in tents in the parking lot, some were filming each other. One man had brought a folding chair, a thermos, and what appeared to be a homemade catapult built entirely out of pool noodles. "This is a coordinated assembly," Vance said slowly. "A militia preparing to storm a fortified structure. The structure is called Walmart, sir. Then Walmart is the target. If we can break this gathering, we break their will completely. No civilization recovers from watching their bravest warriors fall in the first battle." This was the moment historians would later call the first mistake. There would be many more before sunrise. Vance selected his finest unit for ground reconnaissance. 6 soldiers, led personally by Subcommander Reth Calloway, would infiltrate the crowd, identify their leadership, and report back before the main invasion force descended. Calloway had graduated top of his class in tactical infiltration. He had studied 17 languages. He had never once failed a mission. He activated the squad's human disguise generators and watched his soldiers transform. Calloway became a tall man in a flannel jacket. Trooper Brennan became a heavyset man in a hunting vest. Trooper Dale became, for reasons the generator never explained, a man dressed entirely as a giant inflatable turkey. Trooper Wyatt became an elderly woman in a tracksuit holding a thermos of coffee that was actually a tactical scanner. Trooper Holt became a teenager in pajama pants. Trooper Marsh became a man wearing a Santa hat 3 weeks before Christmas, which Calloway found deeply suspicious but could not explain. "Why is Marsh dressed like a seasonal deity?" Calloway asked. "The generator says it increases blending probability," Marsh said. "It is November 4th. The generator does not care." The shuttle descended into a wooded area 2 miles from the target. The team moved through the trees in tight formation, weapons disguised as ordinary objects, scanners reading every signal in range. Calloway raised a hand and the squad halted at the tree line. Ahead of them, lit up like a fortress under siege, the Walmart supercenter blazed with light. Hundreds of vehicles packed the lot. Generators hummed. A man on a megaphone shouted something about doorbusters and limited quantities. The crowd roared back like a single living organism. Calloway studied it through his scanner. Heart rates elevated. Adrenaline spiking. Group cohesion readings climbing into territory that, on any other planet, would indicate an army preparing for a final, desperate charge against overwhelming odds. "This is not a shopping event," he whispered into the squad channel. This is a holy war. Trooper Wyatt, still disguised as an elderly woman, adjusted her tracksuit and looked at the readings. Sir, recommend extreme caution. If this is their breeding ground for soldiers, the survivors of this event will be the deadliest humans on the planet. Calloway nodded grimly. He had no idea how right he was about to be proven wrong. The doors of the Walmart opened at 5 a.m. exactly. The sound that followed was unlike anything in the Gravax Empire's 3,000 years of combat history. It was not a war cry. It was something worse, pure, unfiltered, chaotic joy, mixed with the kind of aggression usually reserved for blood feuds. Hundreds of humans surged forward at once, screaming about televisions, blenders, and something called a doorbuster price, shoving past each other with shopping carts moving at speeds that should not have been physically possible. Calloway watched a grown man in a Carhartt jacket body-check a teenager out of the way to reach a stack of waffle irons. He watched two women fight over the last discounted air fryer with their bare hands, while a small child filmed it on a phone and narrated the whole thing like a sports announcer. He watched an elderly man, an actual elderly human, not a disguised soldier, sprint faster than any Gravax athlete Calloway had ever trained with, straight toward a pallet of televisions, screaming a single word that the translator rendered only as mine. "Command," Calloway said quietly into his channel, voice shaking for the first time in his career. "I do not think we understand this planet at all." Behind him, Trooper Dale, still wearing the inflatable turkey costume, was swept into the crowd and vanished from sight within seconds. The invasion of Earth had officially begun. It was already going wrong. Calloway lost contact with Trooper Dale for almost 6 full minutes, which on any other mission would have triggered an immediate extraction protocol. Instead, Dale's voice crackled back over the channel, sounding strangely cheerful. "Command, I have acquired a television. That was not the mission. It was 60% off." Calloway closed his eyes, recalibrated, and pushed forward through the crowd with the rest of his squad, scanning for any sign of organized leadership. What he found instead was something his training had never prepared him for. Humans were not fighting each other out of hatred. Many of them were laughing while they shoved. Strangers were helping other strangers carry boxes to their cars 1 minute and elbowing them out of the way for a toaster the next. There was no consistent enemy, no consistent ally, no pattern his tactical mind could lock onto. It was chaos with no center, and chaos with no center could not be defeated because there was nothing to aim at. Near the electronics section, Trooper Wyatt, still disguised as an elderly woman, had been adopted by a group of actual elderly women who insisted she join their early bird crew. They handed her a laminated shopping list, a thermos refill, and a walkie-talkie of their own design. Within minutes, Wyatt was coordinating cart movements with military precision, not realizing she had been fully absorbed into a human shopping squadron that had clearly been training for this moment for years. "Command," Wyatt reported, "this group has better logistics than our last campaign on Pallor 7. Explain. They have a supply chain, a communications network, and a contingency plan for if the good blenders sell out. I believe I have found their officer class." Calloway pressed forward and found Trooper Marsh, still in the Santa hat, standing completely frozen in the toy aisle, surrounded by parents fighting over the last of some kind of plastic action figure. A woman in a bathrobe had pinned a man against a shelf, both of them gripping the same box, neither willing to let go. Marsh status. "Command, I am witnessing something I do not have a translation for. These adults are willing to engage in physical combat over a toy intended for children who are, in most cases, not even present. Are they fighting for resources? Survival? No, sir. I believe this is for something called Christmas morning. What is Christmas morning? I do not know. But it commands more loyalty than anything I have seen in our entire military doctrine." Calloway's scanner beeped sharply. A new heat signature had appeared near the front of the store, pulsing erratically, drawing a massive crowd. He pushed toward it, expecting some kind of weapon or rally point, and instead found a single folding table where a man in an apron was handing out small paper cups of something steaming. "Free samples," the man shouted. "Get your free samples, folks, while they last." The crowd around the table moved with more focus, more intensity. more terrifying, single-minded purpose than any military unit Calloway had ever commanded. He watched grown adults elbow past each other for a cup of sample chili the size of a thimble. He understood in that moment that he was witnessing not a society in collapse, but a society operating exactly as it was designed to. It still made no strategic sense to him. That was the problem. Calloway gathered his scattered squad near the garden section 20 minutes later, minus Trooper Dale, who arrived last, still in the inflatable turkey costume. Now also wearing a discount Christmas sweater over the top of it, and pushing a cart with 3 televisions stacked inside. "Explain the additional purchases," Calloway said. "They were on sale, sir." "It would have been illogical not to. You are a soldier of the Gravax Empire." Dale looked down at the cart, then back up at Calloway, with what the translator rendered as genuine confusion. "Sir, with respect, so was I 5 minutes ago. Now I believe I am also a savvy shopper." Calloway opened a private channel back to the mothership, voice tight. "Commander Vance, this is Calloway. Requesting updated assessment of ground conditions." Vance's voice came back sharp and impatient. "Report. Sir, the target population does not behave according to any conflict model in our database. They show no unified leadership, no consistent allegiance, and extreme tolerance for personal risk over objects of minimal strategic value. Recommend we reconsider our approach to this region." There was a pause on the channel. Then Vance said the words that would haunt Gravak's military doctrine for the rest of the campaign. "Negative, Sub-Commander. If a population this disorganized can produce this much aggression over consumer goods, imagine what they will do to defend their actual cities. We move to the next target immediately. Find their largest gathering of warriors and assess their true combat readiness." Calloway looked around at his squad, one in an inflatable turkey costume with 3 stolen televisions, one fully embedded in a retired women's tactical shopping unit, one frozen in horror near a toy aisle, and felt, for the first time in his career, something his species rarely experienced. "Doubt. Sir," he said quietly, "where exactly is our next target?" "A location your scanners have flagged as having the highest concentration of armed, aggressive, sleep-deprived humans on the continent. The humans call it Las Vegas." Calloway did not know it yet, but the real disaster had not even started. The Gravax shuttle touched down in the desert just outside Las Vegas a little after midnight, the city glowing on the horizon like something built specifically to overload an alien sensor array. Commander Vance had transferred ground command directly to himself this time, unwilling to trust a second failure to a subordinate. He stepped off the ramp in a disguise that rendered him as a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit, flanked by 10 soldiers in similar forms, all moving in tight formation toward the lights. His scanner screamed almost immediately. "Commander," said Trooper Higgins, walking beside him, "energy readings across this entire district are completely unstable. Sound levels, light patterns, and biological stress markers are off the chart. This reads like the staging ground for a planetary war." "Then it is exactly what we hoped to find," Vance said. "A true test of their military capacity." They entered the strip on foot, and within seconds Vance understood that his sensors had not been lying, only failing to explain what they were looking at. Lights exploded in every color across buildings taller than anything in their own capital. Crowds moved in every direction at once, dressed in clothing that defied tactical classification. Sequins, feathers, costumes resembling animals, costumes resembling historical figures. Costumes resembling nothing at all. Music blasted from every doorway, overlapping into something that should have been chaos, but somehow formed its own strange rhythm. A man dressed as a famous singer from the previous century stood on a street corner posing for photographs with tourists, completely unbothered by the heat. A woman on stilts dressed as a showgirl walked past without acknowledging anyone. Vance watched a group of grown men in matching bachelor party shirts run screaming with joy down the center of the street, one of them holding a giant inflatable swan over his head like a trophy. "Identify command structure," Vance ordered. His soldiers scanned the crowd for nearly a full minute before Trooper Higgins finally spoke. "Sir, there isn't one. Authority appears to rotate randomly between security personnel, performers, and a man currently shouting prices for taxi rides on a megaphone." Vance felt his confidence waver for the first time since departing the mothership. Then identify their most heavily defended structure. The center of their power. The scanner locked onto a massive building glowing gold, its entrance flanked by fountains taller than the shuttle they had landed in. Crowds streamed in and out endlessly, day and night meaning nothing here. That location, Higgins said. Designation, casino. Vance led his soldiers inside, expecting a command center, a throne room, something resembling the seat of true human power. Instead, he found rows of flashing machines, each surrounded by humans feeding them small pieces of paper and pulling levers with the kind of desperate hope Vance had only seen in soldiers praying before their final battle. Bells rang, lights spun. Somewhere nearby, a woman screamed in pure joy and was immediately swarmed by casino staff handing her something called a jackpot. "This is a temple," Vance said slowly. "They worship probability itself. Sir, I am reading extreme emotional volatility from every single person in this room. Joy, despair. Sometimes both within the same 10 seconds. Vance moved deeper into the structure, soldiers fanning out to gather intelligence, and found himself standing at the edge of a long table where humans were tossing small colored discs back and forth, while a man in a vest commanded their full attention with nothing but cards and quiet authority. "That man," Vance whispered, "he commands respect through silence and precision. That is leadership." He approached the table, disguise holding steady, and sat down across from the dealer with the calm confidence of a man who had broken armies. "I wish to test my fortune against your structure." The dealer didn't even look up. $25 minimum, big spender. "You in or you holding up my line?" Vance placed a card in front of him that his soldiers had quietly generated to mimic local currency exactly. 3 hands later, every chip was gone, and the dealer was already sliding cards to the next player, without a flicker of acknowledgement that an alien commander had just lost his species equivalent of a small fortune. "This man," Vance said into his private channel, soldiers nearby listening in stunned silence, "is the single most disciplined being I have encountered on this entire planet. And he does not even know my name." Behind him, Trooper Higgins had wandered toward a stage where a small crowd had gathered to watch a man perform card tricks, laughing and gasping in unison. Higgins watched closely, scanning every motion, convinced this was some kind of advanced training demonstration for elite human operatives. "Commander," Higgins said slowly, "I believe I have found their special forces." "Confirm." He just made a card disappear, reappear inside a sealed bottle, and reappear again behind a stranger's ear. No technology was used, no psionics. No detectable trick of any kind that I can identify. Vance turned, watched the performance for several seconds, and felt something close to genuine fear settle into his chest for the first time that night. If their entertainers can bend reality without tools, what exactly are their soldiers capable of? Neither of them knew it yet, but the true disaster of the night hadn't even begun. It started 40 minutes later in a small lounge near the back of the casino, with a karaoke machine, a stage, and a microphone that Trooper Dale, who had quietly followed the squad against direct orders, still smelling faintly of Black Friday and victory, could not resist picking up. The lounge was dim, lit mostly by a small stage with a single spinning light, and a karaoke machine glowing in the corner like an artifact from another age. A handful of tired tourists sat scattered around tables, nursing drinks, half watching a screen scroll through song titles. Trooper Dale, still partially convinced he was a savvy shopper after his Black Friday transformation, wandered in separated from the squad, scanner beeping at the strange device in the corner. "Unknown machine," Dale muttered into his private channel, the one he wasn't technically supposed to use without permission. "Possible communication relay." Investigating. He approached the machine, studied its glowing screen, and watched as a woman ahead of him in line selected a song, grabbed the microphone, and began singing with the kind of confidence usually reserved for war heroes, giving their final speech before battle. The crowd cheered. She was not very good. Nobody cared. "This is a ritual," Dale whispered. "A bonding ritual disguised as performance." He picked up the second microphone before he could stop himself, scanner still recording every detail, and selected a song completely at random, because the title meant nothing to him. The opening notes hit, the crowd turned. And Trooper Dale, soldier of the Gravvax Empire, conqueror in training, began to sing in a voice his disguise had clearly not been designed to produce, cracking on every high note. Completely off rhythm, utterly fearless. The crowd did not laugh at him. The crowd lost their minds in joy. Again, someone shouted. One more time. Commander Vance received the alert on his scanner 2 minutes later, unauthorized communications signature, civilian gathering. Unscheduled activity, and arrived at the lounge just in time to see Trooper Dale standing on a small stage, surrounded by cheering humans, several of them recording him on their phones. One of them attempting to lift him onto their shoulders. "Trooper Dale," Vance said through gritted teeth, disguise barely concealing his fury, "explain this immediately." Dale lowered the microphone, breathless. Eyes wide with something Vance had never seen in a soldier's face before. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. "Commander, I believe I have discovered something more powerful than any weapon in our arsenal. This is a clear violation of operational discipline. Sir, with respect." "Listen to them." Dale gestured at the crowd, still chanting for another song. "They are not afraid of me. They are not even suspicious of me. They simply want me to continue." Vance opened his mouth to issue a formal reprimand, and that was the exact moment a woman in a bachelorette sash grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the stage. "You're up next, big guy. Don't be shy. I am a commanding officer of an interstellar military force." "Sure you are, honey." "Pick a song." Vance attempted to explain, in increasingly precise language, that he had no intention of participating in a civilian ritual while conducting a covert reconnaissance mission. The woman did not appear to process a single word of this explanation. Instead, she placed a microphone directly into his hand and pointed at the screen, where a song title was already highlighted and ready to begin. His soldiers watched in stunned silence as their commander, conqueror of Pallor 7, breaker of the Dren Collective, stood frozen on a small stage in a Las Vegas karaoke lounge with a microphone in his hand and absolutely no tactical plan for what came next. The music started. There was no retreating now without losing what little dignity remained. Vance began to sing. It was, by any measurable galactic standard, terrible. His pitch wavered. His rhythm collapsed entirely by the second verse. He forgot the words twice and substituted them with the nearest sounds his translator could generate. And the crowd, every single person in that lounge, erupted into the loudest cheering of the entire night, phones raised, voices joining in, completely and totally on his side. For the first time since stepping off his shuttle, Commander Vance did not understand what he was feeling, and that frightened him more than any weapon this planet could have pointed at him. He finished the song to applause that felt, against every instinct in his body, genuinely earned. He set down the microphone, turned to his stunned squad, and opened his mouth to issue new orders. What came out instead was, again, Trooper Higgins leaned toward Trooper Dale and whispered, "Sir, I do not believe the commander is currently in command." Outside the lounge, unnoticed by anyone, a second, much larger Gravvax fleet was already entering Earth's orbit. The full invasion force, summoned the moment Vance's earlier report came through describing a planet of supposedly terrifying, undisciplined warriors. They were not arriving to assist a recon mission. They were arriving to begin a full-scale war based entirely on a misunderstanding about a parking lot, a casino, and a karaoke machine. None of them had any idea what they were about to walk into. The full Gravvax invasion fleet broke atmosphere at 3 a.m, exactly as the sun was nowhere near rising, and exactly as Commander Vance was being talked into a duet by 2 tourists from Ohio who insisted he had, quote, "a surprisingly good ear for harmony." High Commander Drask, overseeing the operation from the lead warship, expected to find his ground team holding a secured perimeter. Civilian leadership identified, and resistance levels fully mapped. Instead, his scanners picked up something his tactical training had never accounted for. Every single member of the original recon squad, including Commander Vance himself, was showing biometric readings consistent with celebration. Heart rates elevated, not from combat, but from something his translator labeled after several failed attempts as fun. Ground team, report your position immediately, Drask snapped over the main channel. Static. Then Trooper Dale's voice, slightly out of breath. High Commander, we are currently engaged with the local population in a ritual bonding ceremony. Recommend you do not interrupt. Morale is extremely high. This is not a sanctioned objective. Sir, with respect, you should see this place. Drask ordered 3 full squads down immediately, fully armed. Prepared to restore order and remind his soldiers exactly which empire they served. They landed in a parking structure 2 blocks from the casino, marched in formation toward the lights, weapons disguised but ready, discipline locked into every step. They made it as far as the front entrance before a man in an Elvis costume offered them free drink coupons, and a woman handed them all light-up necklaces for the show. By the time Drask physically located his ground team, every single one of his elite reinforcement soldiers was wearing at least one glow stick. 2 of them were holding drinks they did not remember accepting. And one had been pulled into a group photo, with strangers celebrating a birthday. What, Drask said slowly, voice shaking with something between fury and disbelief, is happening to my army? Vance turned from the stage, microphone still loosely in his hand. Face flushed with something his species had no proper word for. High Commander, glad you could join us. You should try the song selection. It is surprisingly therapeutic. We are conducting a military invasion. We were, Vance said. I am reconsidering the timeline. Drask raised his weapon, disguise flickering with controlled fury, prepared to make an example. To remind every soldier present exactly what they had sworn to serve. He aimed it not at a human, but at the karaoke machine itself, the source of this contagion, this collapse in discipline. Stand down, he ordered. We are leaving this den of psychological warfare immediately and resuming the true invasion at dawn. The crowd, mistaking his weapon for an elaborate stage prop, screamed in delighted approval and began chanting for an encore. Drask hesitated just for a second, but in that second something shifted behind his eyes, the same thing that had broken Vance 2 hours earlier and Dale before that. He lowered the weapon slightly. One song, he muttered, almost to himself, almost ashamed. For reconnaissance purposes only. His soldiers did not even attempt to hide their relief. By the time the sun rose over the desert, every single Gravak soldier sent to conquer Las Vegas had, in some form, been absorbed into the very city they had come to destroy. Some were still singing. Some were nursing their first hangover in their species' recorded history. Trooper Wyatt had been formally inducted into the elderly women's shopping squadron via group chat and had agreed to return for Christmas sales. Trooper Dale had been offered a regular Tuesday night slot at the lounge and was seriously considering it. Commander Vance stood outside the casino as dawn broke pink and gold over the desert, staring at the fading lights of the strip, microphone still somehow in his hand, and made the call he knew he had to make. He opened a direct channel to the High Council of the Gravak's Empire, the highest authority in his species' government, and prepared to deliver the single strangest military report in the Empire's 3,000-year history. This is Commander Vance, he said, voice steady despite everything. Reporting from Earth. Status of invasion, the Council demanded. Vance looked at his soldiers, glow sticks still glowing faintly around their necks, one of them humming the chorus of a song he could not get out of his head, and answered with the only words that felt honest. Recommend immediate withdrawal. This planet cannot be conquered. Explain. Their resistance is not military, it is cultural, it does not fight back. It absorbs. There was a long silence on the channel, the kind that had once preceded the destruction of entire fleets for far smaller failures. Vance braced for judgment. What came instead would change the future of his species forever. The High Council convened in full emergency session, every member present, every screen in the chamber filled with footage gathered from Vance's own recordings. They watched the parking lot stampede in Springfield. They watched grown men fight over discounted blenders with more ferocity than most soldiers showed in actual combat. They watched Commander Vance himself, decorated conqueror of 11 worlds, standing on a small stage with a microphone, singing off-key to a room full of cheering strangers who had no idea he could have ended their lives with a single order. This is your evidence of an unconquerable planet, one elder said slowly, and it is footage of you embarrassing yourself in a beverage lounge." "With respect," Vance answered, "I would like the Council to explain how an army with no weapons, no command structure, and no apparent fear of authority managed to dismantle the discipline of 3 full Gravax squadrons in under 6 hours. We did not lose to their military. We lost to their hospitality, their chaos, and something they call karaoke night." The Council reviewed every report in silence. The recon failure in Springfield, the casino incident, the full collapse of discipline among Drask's reinforcement squad. Finally, the eldest member spoke, voice heavy with something between disbelief and reluctant respect. "Issue the classification," she said. "Planetary designation Earth, threat level cultural not military, conquest status not recommended. Risk to invading personnel, total psychological assimilation within 12 hours of ground contact." And so it was written into Gravax military history, studied by cadets for generations afterward, as the single greatest cautionary tale their empire had ever produced. Earth was never invaded again, not because its armies were too strong, not because its weapons were too advanced, but because every single force sent to study it for conquest came back changed. Singing songs they didn't understand, craving food that gave them heartburn their bodies were never designed to process, and quietly, secretly wanting to go back. Commander Vance returned to active duty eventually, though never quite the same soldier he had been before. Years later, when a junior officer asked him about the legendary Earth campaign during a training briefing, he was quiet for a long moment before answering. "We went there to break their will," he said. "Instead, they showed us a good time and let us leave with the memory intact. That is a more effective defense than any weapon I have ever faced, and I have faced quite a few." Far below, on the planet Earth itself, nobody ever learned how close they had come to invasion. Life continued exactly as it always had. Black Friday returned the following year, fiercer and louder than before. The lights of Las Vegas never stopped glowing, never stopped pulling in strangers who arrived as one person and left as someone slightly changed. And every so often, in a dim karaoke lounge on the edge of the Strip, a regular bartender would mention a strange, oddly formal group of tourists who came through one quiet morning years back. Sang surprisingly well for beginners, tipped generously, and left before sunrise without ever giving their names. Nobody thought much of it. Strange tourists were nothing new in that city. Nobody ever imagined that the fate of an entire planet had quietly been decided on that small stage, under a single spinning light. With nothing but a microphone standing between Earth and a war it never even knew it had won. If this story made you laugh, made you think, or made you want to go sing some questionable karaoke yourself, let me know in the comments below. Drop your favorite moment from this story. Tell me where you think these aliens should try to invade next. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter in this universe. Share this with a friend who needs a laugh today, and I will see you in the next story.